Hi. Today I want to talk about food aggression. Food aggression to me is something that it's really what got me started. As far as dog behavior and dogs, and it's really one of my big, I don't want to say passions, but kind of, because it's kind of how it got me started in dog behavior and dog training, because I had a dog that I had to deal with food aggression, and it was pretty bad. Um, at the time, I didn't understand what was going on. I thought I had done my absolute best to prevent it, and I thought it was something that was rare, to be honest. I thought it was something that was very bad, and his was, because his food aggression was directed towards people, and I was unable to handle him due to the level of his food aggression, and I ended up having to give him back to the breeder. And after that, I really wanted to find out why. It was something that I had to do. I had to find out why. So, in my quest of trying to find out the why he became food aggressive, what triggered it, I learned a lot of things. And what I want to talk about is the why. I'm not going to talk about how to fix it, because every dog is different, but I want to give some of my opinions on what I found with regarding food aggression. And the things I have found is food aggression is also known as resource guarding, and resource guarding is extremely common. And to be honest, resource guarding is actually more common than it is uncommon. And the reason for that is because that's the only way dogs have to communicate. And it's not something bad. I know a lot of people that hear the word aggression and they get very fearful, they get very upset, they get very nervous, and it's very scary. Especially if you have a breed that is big, if you have a dog that has a very strong bite, if you have a dog that is very intense about it, or if you have a dog that's going after you. As far as a dog being food aggressive towards other dogs, in my opinion, that's it's acceptable. It sounds strange, I know, but you know, dogs are not people. They can't talk to communicate. They can't have a conversation and say, okay, please don't touch my food. I'm trying to eat this. I'm really, really hungry. Please don't touch my food. The only way they have to speak is by growling and showing teeth, and sometimes, if they're pushed far enough, biting. But the things that I found is, I consider myself an evolving behaviorist, because my opinions as I learn really change. I try not to stick with my opinion until I know, more, because I can always learn more. So, what I have found as far as food aggression goes is, to me, it seems like there is really three reasons for food aggression. I used to say there was only two reasons until I really started seeing, something that was a little bit different. I still don't know if I consider it fully a third reason, but anyways, the reasons that I found for food aggression is, the first one is, I like to call, because this is the only way that I really see it, is paranoia. And by paranoia, I mean you have a dog that is very anxious around food. You have a dog that is very concerned that his food is going to get taken away. You have a dog that's very worried and just generally they seem very paranoid. And by that, just their body language, they, while they're eating, they tend to eat really fast, or they'll kind of pick at their food. And the reason is because they're basically trying to make sure that nobody's going to come and take their food. And you'll notice this by, if they eat really fast, they'll kind of eat and scarf it down, and they'll stop to look around and see if anybody's looking at them, or if anybody's coming too close, and they'll consistently do that. They'll look up and look around. And you'll see their eyes dodging all over the place. Sometimes they refuse to eat out in the open, and they'll try to take their food into a corner, or they'll try to take it behind the couch or the furniture, or they don't feel safe. Sometimes, as soon as you walk near, they might hover over their food and lower their head and, kind of duck around like this. And generally, with that kind of resource guarding, I know it might seem like, a lot of people might say, well, my dog just recently started doing this. I don't understand why he's doing this. We've never taken his food away. We've never pestered him while he's had his food. Well, sometimes it can be small things that can trigger it. Sometimes, something might happen while they were eating, like a loud noise, or maybe, your dog was in the kitchen and something fell on them while they were eating accidentally, or maybe, people were fighting in the other room. Maybe they're just, in general, an anxious dog, and this is something that's been building that you haven't noticed until it got to a point that the dog was, snapped at somebody who walked past. With food aggression like this, my main goal in working with this, and my male was like this, and this is something that I still work with even though he's 3 years old, is I really had to teach him to trust around food. And by trusting around food, it really dealt with a lot of positive associations, keeping mealtime calm and quiet, teaching him, to build up a tolerance level to loud noises and people walking past, and me taking his food away to show him, hey, it's okay, just remain calm. That one's very common, and your dog doesn't have to be a nervous dog to feel that way around food. Your dog doesn't naturally have to be a nervous dog. My dog Caesar, he's not a nervous dog, except when it comes to his food. He's always been, nervous. And this started when it didn't start until he was over a year old. Otherwise, he ate perfectly fine with people. He had no problems. To be honest, I'm not sure what triggered it, other than it just happened. So, you can have a very happy-go-lucky, outgoing dog, and 3 years old, and then all of a sudden one day, bam, something triggers that, and, it just happens. So, the goal that I really try to teach people with that is to teach your dog positive associations with food, slowly work up their comfort level into what they can handle as far as stimulation, noises, movement, things like that. The second one is a dog that is overly excited about food. And this really looks like a dog who gets very excited when just they think that food is coming. They might pace, or they might run around in circles, or they might start panting real heavily. Some dogs will bark at you, some will jump all over you, some will whine. I've even heard of dogs who will start urinating on the floor because they get so excited. They'll start drooling heavily, or, and sometimes it's not even that excessive. Sometimes it's just a dog who's standing there staring at you. Or, sometimes you'll have dogs that will just sit there, will come up and sit beside you, but deep inside they're just getting really excited, and they'll have, their eyes will be very large, and their movements are very intense. And they will keep their eyes glued to you, they'll keep their eyes glued to the bowl, and a lot of times if there's movement around them, it's just, you know, a lot of times they'll eat quickly, they won't look around, they'll just sit there and eat and eat and eat and eat, and any movement near them is usually enough to set them off to just reach out and grab and then go back to what they're doing. Dogs like that, what I really work towards doing is not only teaching the positive association around food, but also keeping them calm around food, not feeding them when they're in an excitement, when they're in an excited state like that. When they're really excited, I will make them wait upwards of an hour just standing there holding the bowl, or have the bowl sitting on the counter with food, or prepping the food, or you know, just rattling the food bag or rattling the food in the bowl, and making them slowly learn self-control on excitement by just waiting them out until they're calm and relaxed. I've had to do that with my female, who used to get very, very excited about food, and any movement, any dogs moving around her would set her off to snap at them. And that's because she is just high energy, and the reason she would snap is just because all that excitement had to go somewhere, and she usually make a loud roar and just ha. And that is also very common, and it's, you know, that one's a little bit more harder in my opinion to deal with because they're very excited. I suggest exercising your dog with high energy draining exercises, you know, jogging or bike riding or going for a really long walk or playing fetch or swimming or something like that just before they eat, and that way, you know, they're getting ready to calm down anyways, their energy's drained. They can't put a lot of oomph into their, you know, really guarding the food and stuff, along with teaching them to remain calm around food, that they can't just, you know, have food when they're excited. So those are, in my opinion, the two major ones. Now, another thing that I have started to notice, like I said, it used to be for me, I used to believe, okay, it was either one or the other, one or the other. And then I started noticing that there are some dogs who are a little bit in between, who seem to like to guard, and I don't want to go so far as to say it's them being dominant over it, but in a sense, yes, that's kind of the closest thing that I can really say about it, is they just become very defensive about it, but they're very, you know, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, and it seems, I know it seems a little contradicting because it's like, wait, this is resource guarding, so isn't that the whole thing? But no, not really, but to be honest, I'm still trying to kind of figure that one out myself. So with something like that, a dog who is domineering over food and says, hey, this is mine, you can't have it just because it's mine, for a dog like that, I would really say that the owner really has to step up and start doing a lot more NILF training. And if you don't know what NILF is, NILF, it stands for Nothing in Life is Free training, and it's pretty easy to find if you Google it. But I don't want to get into specifics on training because, like I said, every dog is different, and just because you think your dog is a nervous dog around food, he might be the complete opposite. And also, you know, I've seen dogs who you would assume are going to be very reactive around food just due to the extreme excitement levels they get into, barking and howling and you know, throwing this huge fit, and they're not. So it really depends on the dog. Just because your dog barks at you when you go to set the food bowl down doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to attack you. These are just some signs that I've seen in dogs who are food aggressive, who are resource guarders. It's not saying that every dog that does these behaviors is going to be a resource guarder. This is just some of the behaviors that I myself have noticed in dogs when they are going to resource guard. So, you know, if your dog is like 5 years old and has always been barking at you to put its food down, don't even worry about it. If you don't want to change that, fine. You don't have to. If it's something you want to change, well, you know, go ahead, work on it. But try not, you know, don't feel paranoid. But these are just the things, like I said, that I have noticed in resource guarding. These are the 3 things that I have noticed in resource guarding. And in my opinion, all of these things, you need to change the way the dog sees you and its food. The way it sees you bringing the food, the way it sees feeding time, the way it sees, you know, you want it to be a pleasant experience. There is never a time when I think food aggressiveness or resource guarding should be dealt with a firm, you know, corrective hand. I don't feel that way. I feel this is more of something that needs to be dealt with positively. And while I do think that a dog to a certain point should be given a verbal correction to be stopped before anything happens, that in my opinion should only be given after the dog is already comfortable around food. And by that what I mean is, for example, my male Caesar, he was very paranoid. He still is a little bit paranoid when it comes to feeding. However, when we first started working with him, I was very light on him as far as, you know, things were kept positive, things were kept upbeat, things were kept calm. Like I said, I wanted to change the way he felt. I wanted him to feel comfortable around food. I didn't want him to feel paranoid. I didn't want him to feel anxious about his food. I didn't want him to feel upset. So I changed the atmosphere. I kept him fed to begin with in a calm place, in a calm environment. I did not touch him while he was eating. I did not bother him while he was eating. He would eat with me there, yes. I would not talk to him. I would not touch him because I didn't want to bother him. Because he's trying to eat. Do you want to be bothered while you're eating? Do you want somebody to pet your head while you're, you know, eating your pizza on the couch? Not always. So, you know, I worked up that to get him to a point that he was comfortable. Once he was comfortable with that, then I would introduce another dog. And when I introduced another dog, and he would flash his eyes up and try and stare at the other dog, that's when I'd say, hey, look back down at your bowl and keep eating, you're fine. And I would remind him, hey, you know, you're fine. And that is as far as I went with verbal corrections, was a hey, you know, and I'd point back to his bowl. And there's a reason, because food guarding is, like I said, resource guarding, food guarding is very natural. This is not something that you can train away. You can change the way that your dog sees food. You can change the way your dog sees you approaching with food. And you can change the way your dog trusts you with food. You cannot change a dog from guarding food. You cannot change that. That is simply instinct. That is something that you cannot get rid of. No matter what you do, you cannot force a dog into not resource guarding. All you can do is change their mind. And while it is scary, and while I do not suggest everybody try dealing with something like this, like I said, my very first dog, I wasn't able to handle it. And to be honest, I'm very glad I didn't try any more than what I did, and I'm very glad that I gave him back to somebody who could deal with it, because I couldn't. You don't have to feel ashamed if you can't deal with something like that, because it is hard. It's very hard to deal with. I suggest if you're dealing with something like that, you contact a behaviorist, not necessarily a trainer, but a behaviorist who understands dog behavior, not just dog training, so that they can help you. And if you just don't have the time to put into working with the dog for several hours a day with food guarding, you can try getting a crate and only feeding your dog in the crate or in another room. If you still can't deal with that, let's say you have little kids and your dog is targeting people or the children, I suggest you find a new home for the dog with somebody who can, or, as sad as it may sound, if you have to, have the dog humanely euthanized, because not everybody can deal with this, and it's very difficult when it is, when you do have to deal with it. But I want people to understand that food aggression towards other dogs is very natural, and it's something that you always have to take into account. Even if you got them both as puppies and they ate out of the same bowl together, and then suddenly one decides, hey, that's mine, that's puberty, that's also very natural. So if you own multiple dogs, that is something you should always be aware of, because it can crop up at any time in your dog's life. As far as guarding against humans, that is very much more serious, and that is something that you do need to deal with, or at the very least manage it if that's something that you're willing to do. So I hope that I gave everybody a little bit of insight into food aggression, resource guarding, and thanks for watching.